And we're back.
I'm
and
back.
we have Phil. Frank has already jumped on the chat to ask, is Phil back
Is
this
Phil
week?
back? Is he? Is it truly him?
Yes.
Yes, it
Phil
is.
is
I have
back from his
returned.
adventures. I didn't have any adventures. Well, I had adventures, but they weren't traveling adventures, I
They
guess.
weren't traveling adventures.
No. And
No.
we're excited to have Rebecca Simon with us tonight.
Woo!
Hi.
Rebecca,
Hello.
tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm Rebecca. I live in Los Angeles, and I know Luke because I worked with him on the Real Pirates podcast because I am a pirate historian. I did my PhD at King's College London, so I lived there for like 5 years. And yeah, now I'm back living in LA, and I'm a part-time college professor, and I've written a couple books. I've got a third book coming out next year, and I do lots of podcasts, lots of articles, and I love House of the Dragons, which I'm really excited to talk about today. So
Hey.
Yes. Yes. So you're an Uber Tolkien and George R.R. Martin fan.
yes.
So
Yes.
I cannot say George R.R. Martin properly because every time I can because I just did, but because of that South Park episode where Butters there's the winter is coming Thanksgiving special, like 3-part Thanksgiving special, that is all about Game of Thrones. And they go and try and talk to George about like what's going to happen in the books and all that kind of stuff. And Butters just can't say his name properly. He's always like, "We're going to go talk to George R.R. Martin." And so because of that and my love for South Park, I just always say his name in that way.
Hey, I mean, like, it just happens that way, you know. I don't know.
It does. So Phil, this last week you were in London, seeing some fun stuff.
Some fun sights, some fun stuff, some fun walking around, lots of walking around, which was fantastic because I usually get disoriented in London. I've only been there twice before, and those 2 times was hanging out with Luke, but this time it was not possible, unfortunately.
Oh,
Unfortunately
man.
not. It's a busy time.
Yeah, but no, I was able to get the lay of the city a bit more this time, so that was very good. So I got a lot of good geographical memories now of like where everything is, because it's like, you know, London is not built the way that other kind of cities would be, in my opinion. I think because like it's just so hard to really see like where the relationship between like Trafalgar Square is to way out beyond where I just take a tube somewhere like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stops away, like Baker Street, for example. I don't know. I have no idea where those things are. Up, down, left, right. No idea.
Yeah.
But I've gotten a better insight on that now, thankfully.
Way to
It was
go.
good. It was able to disconnect from everything. Just
I remember like the very first time I moved to London, like 2011. There was a sign in the tube that was sort of what the tube map looks like to tourists, and it's just all the tube lines have like specific colors for those who don't know, and it was just this like swirl of colors just all mixed together, and totally confusing. But
I remember when I first moved to London, I think it was like my 3rd day living there, and I've only been to London twice before, but both times for like just a couple of days on like a stop on another vacation. I remember it was rush hour, Oxford Tube Station, and I'm like lost trying to get my Oyster card out, and I definitely like may have cried in that moment because But oddly enough, what's funny is what helped me really learn London was I got a job as a film location tour guide my first year living there. Oddly enough, being American, being a tour guide, I always threw people a little, but that's how I learned. I learned the whole city because of that. It was awesome.
I tell you what helped me learn the city was writing some of my first books because they were London centric. They were Victorian London, but more or less London hasn't changed its layout, you know, since forever. And because of that, I was either poring over maps or walking London itself. So that really helped. And then several of my kind of previous jobs were required a lot of traveling through London. So my geography of London is quite good now. But those first visits, you know, I had no idea that Trafalgar. I literally such an idiot. I literally took the tube from Leicester Square to Trafalgar Square because I didn't
That's
realize.
okay. I took from Piccadilly Circus to Leicester Square once, not knowing. Like when I first moved there, like it's okay. What also helped me live in, get to know London was because I had kind of like weird luck with flats I lived in. Landlords kept selling every place I lived in, so I moved. I lived in 6 different places, each place in a different part of the city.
Same.
So like I lived in South London for like 2 years, and I lived in North London or South London for 2.5 years, North London for like 2 years. Yeah, my friend, one of my good friends, who's a lifelong Londoner, like born and bred, jokes that I probably know the city better than him now. So
yeah. Nice. Actually, I have a really similar kind of pattern. Yeah, I lived in South London again for about 2.5 years, and then North London for about 2 years. Little bit of West London.
I did West London. Yeah.
Never East. Never East. That's the only postcode.
Don't go east.
So, it's pointless over there. It's not pointless. There's a lot of fun stuff, but transport wise and whatever, it's not where I was ever interested in going.
Yeah, South London was kind of tough on the transport, especially on weekends when I had to be in Central London for tour guiding. And a lot of times the trains would have maintenance, and it was a little tricky sometimes. North London was so much easier. Like
absolutely. So Chief Brody Rules, which is Frank, mentions in the chat that She-Hulk called Luke. She-Hulk did call me. I made a video about it the other day. If you haven't seen it, go watch that video in which Tatiana gives me a call to talk about the last episode of She-Hulk and what I thought, and I didn't hold back. Frank also says he loves how everyone has first and last names, and then there's just Phil.
This is me. I'm a cartoon character. That's what I am.
And Biffer the Hobbit is here. Hello, Biffer. Welcome.
Excellent. Hello.
Welcome to the show. So we're here to talk about House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. There's obviously one more episode left of House of the Dragon, but
Did you say House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones?
I did say House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, but I meant the Rings of Power and House of the Dragon.
Okay, so before the episode started, Luke was talking to me about Lord of the Rings, but he kept calling it Rings of Power.
Yes. It's all mixed into one big long thing now. It's there's too many thes and the rings and the houses and
the houses, the rings, powers,
difficult
the
for a
thrones.
guy like me. I'm a simpleton. But yeah, so yeah, there's one more episode left of House of the Dragon, and Rings of Power was just concluded, so we figured this would be a really good point to chat about all of this stuff. So let's start from the beginning a little bit. Rebecca, what were your initial thoughts on the kind of general announcements when Rings of Power was announced and House of the Dragon? What did you think?
Yeah, so I remember when Lord of the Rings was announced as like a big show on Amazon. I was really excited. I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I've read everything Tolkien has ever written. Lord of the Rings a bazillion times. I know the appendices, the Silmarillion, and so I thought initially they were going to be doing the Silmarillion, or at least I hoped, because there's just so much material there. And then when they said they were going to do it, like kind of during this, it was like kind of sort of Second Age-ish, like it was an odd time period. And I was like, what kind of material are they going to get? So, and then as I started hearing more about it, I tried to like not hear much information. I didn't want to get biased, but the more I started seeing, the more I started hearing, I was kind of like, I don't know how this is going to go. House of the Dragons, what's interesting is that for me it was almost the opposite. So after being so let down by Game of Thrones, which I was also obsessed with, read all the books, everything like that, but it ended so badly. When I heard about House of the Dragon, I was like, there's no way it could be good after what happened. I don't want to watch it. But it was like curiosity got the better of me. And I was like, I'll give this a try. And I was blown away. Like I would almost argue that I think House of Dragons is better than Game of Thrones, at least right now.
Wow.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Like I'm loving it. And so I remember I was about 10 minutes into the episode and I was like, yeah, I'm back. Here we go. This is awesome. Rings of Power, bit of an opposite reaction. 10 minutes in, I was like, not sure. Not sure what's going on here. I'm not sure.
That's what everybody said, no matter who they are.
Yeah. Lots of similar opinions. So
we watched the first 2 episodes. We were in Edinburgh. I had family visiting, and we were up there for a few days. But I was like, look, I have to watch this show. We've got we're gonna do an episode about the first couple episodes anyway, and so yeah, we sat down and watched it, and I mean everyone was bored, and we're all Lord of the Rings fans. Everyone in the room was a Lord of the Rings fan, and it was just like, huh. But the thing is, I was similar. I was mildly excited. I probably followed Rings of the Power stuff more than what you did, Rebecca. But yeah, so I mean, I even when they did their first announcement where they like did the sort of the
map.
woodcuts carved in the
Oh,
you know,
that. Okay.
that I actually sort of liked that. And I was also quite interested when they were saying that this was all practical and they showed how I was like, okay, maybe there is some real like
Craft.
dedication and craftsmanship being put into this show. And so that won me over a little bit. But then the more I kept hearing about, like you were saying, these changes to the timeline, changes to the character,
Yeah.
started listening to various individuals' excuses for why
Excuses.
why it was happening and why they were okay with it. You know, because obviously Peter Jackson didn't adhere 100% to the Lord of the Rings when he did his stuff, but there's something quite. He remains really true to the essence of the story and to the characters and what should be happening. You know, even though some things are mildly changed and moved around, and maybe another character says someone else's line here and that kind of thing. And I think that's what made Peter Jackson's adaptation so great.
Yes.
Was that you could watch it and you feel like you are watching a good adaptation of Lord of the Rings. And every adaptation is never going to be 100% perfect, as in it's not going to be the book verbatim.
Yeah.
But you know, it's you know, the way he did it was so respectful that I you know, to me it enhances the books. You know, I can read the Lord of the Rings, I can watch the films, and they inform each other, I think, in a really quite wonderful way.
Totally agree. And you could just see the love he had for the books and the authenticity, and every single decision he made, every single change he made, it was to make everything as authentic still and as best as possible. And even I remember the actors saying, when I watched all like the DVD specials and everything like that, I remember they were saying that Peter Jackson almost every day would come to them with updated scripts and be like, because they were just always making changes. Like you were saying, even changing a line, and then they would like, well, let's just change a word or something. I think Sean Astin said he's got an entire box full of like the unused scripts.
Yeah.
Because every day it was something new. Like that's the care that not enough people take into movies and adaptations. And that's why they're just so magical, and all the practical effects and the costumes, only CGI when it was necessary.
Yes.
Like there was a tour de force of a film.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Phil, what were your kind of initial reactions?
Well, you know, from the very beginning, in the year 2018, when they were talking about it, I think it was 2018, and my first impressions were like, you know, after The Hobbit, I'm like, what else are you know, can you do anything else? I guess you could do a show, like a TV show, because of the length, you know, because the format works for something that just is Tolkien's kind of bulletin board sort of timeline list of things that happen within the first and second ages. I know there's the Silmarillion, but that's a whole other thing. And, you know, and the rights are most likely because they're combined with Return of the King. So Return of the King, you know, Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and The Hobbit are all a different license than what the Tolkien estate owns because, like, you know, Tolkien did sell it for, like you said, like $100 or something like that in the 70s to Saul Zaentz, and which is now bought by this game company. I forgot what it like. I heard about that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a video game company in like Denmark, I think. They just, you know, they were off, like Saul Zaentz's company was offering it for sale for quite like a year or two, and they swiped it up now, and so now they can do whatever they want with those properties. Anyway, what I wanted to say was the appendices have like a whole like timeline of like what happens in the first and second age and then in the third age, and so anyway, what I wanted to say was I think that format could be a perfect way of portraying a story like this, and I immediately kind of thought, well, I don't trust anybody making a movie but myself. But so when I was so I was gonna give them some leeway. I was gonna give them some like, okay, let's see where this goes, because I did not expect something like this to happen, and it could be handled very well, especially with like the care and attention that the everybody in New Zealand who made Lord of the Rings did, because like that was, like you said, it was a tour de force of a project. And when they were working on that, they were really setting, not just to prove themselves, but also to make something that like of the utmost quality. Like they really dedicated themselves to doing that. And I'm like, if you put that same attitude towards this, I think you could do the same. So then that map came up, and it's like, welcome to the second age, and they show that map of like the second age of Middle Earth, right?
Yeah.
And my brain was already like imagining like what it would be like to make something like this. And I thought, like, do a chronology. I think that would be perfect, especially with the elves who are immortal, and you can like follow them because they're not going to die. And then you can have all these other events taking place, and you can make some kind of epic kind of chronology like show.
Yeah.
And that was where I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be good." I think that's gonna be exciting, to see like some kind of like an epic grand story taking place. Like every time there's another episode, there's a time jump showing these events that would happen, and it's possible to work on it. It's just a little bit unusual because everyone wants like a character centric kind of like intimate drama nowadays. I think like that most, if not all, shows now are very character focused and relationship focused, in a broad sense of the word. And but then, as you all know, the more I heard about it as the years went by, 2019, 2020, 2021, the more I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna watch this. So I was skeptical when the show came out already, and I was not gonna like. I know by the time the show came out, I knew enough where I already made up my mind and I wasn't gonna see it.
Yeah.
But I did, because Luke Deckard show is a thing and I'm on it, so I had to.
That's the thing. None of us really. Well, I say none of us. At least Phil and I didn't plan to watch this show until we decided to do this show, and then we're like, well, if we're gonna do this show, we're gonna have to watch some of these crappy shows, but. Yeah, so the final episode has aired for the Rings of Power, and I'm quite shocked at the conclusion of this series. I really have the most to say about episodes 6, 7, and 8, the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, the only ones that matter, kind of.
Right, and I think that's what was quite interesting to me is by the time you get to episode 8. Like nothing has happened. Like you don't know who Sauron is. You do, but you don't. You don't know who Gandalf is, but you do. The only thing that has happened is that Mordor was created in a day by someone stabbing a magical
brigand just like
ground. And I'm like, the hobbits with the whatever they were calling Gandalf, they just sort of were wandering around doing nothing of interest. Yes, one of them was injured his foot for a while, and they're just sort of wandering around with no sort of motivation or drive, and that doesn't really like add to the overall like story arc of the season. So you just like, there's so much stuff that I was like, wow, that you could cut probably, you could probably make 2 hours worth of story out of all 8 episodes, just by cutting out the kind of the fluff that is throughout the whole show. But what I found quite interesting was the way the show was sort of shamelessly remaking the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, dude.
Particularly with episode 6 basically being a remake or a wannabe remake of Helm's Deep. And there was just something so lazy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really understand why they would do something so, I don't know, so cheap for how much money they've spent on this. Why do something so cheap? I don't know. What did you guys think of that? If you saw
Well,
that particular bit?
I don't know if you remember, Luke, but like
Mm.
2 days ago, I was slightly tipsy, and it was like 3 a.m, and I was just texting you like a huge wall of when I was watching that
I woke up to
episode.
60 text messages.
And I was like, I can't believe what is the why? What is this? You know, I was just ranting. It was a good old time for me, and then I fell asleep. And yeah, man, like I think that's like the crux of like what makes this show so bizarrely empty to me, because you have this canvas to work with,
Mm.
and then you just decide to mimic like stuff from the films,
Yeah.
especially if
Yeah.
the context of this like of the time it takes place in has nothing to do with anything in Lord of the Rings, really, like story, like narrative wise. You know, you can make your own thing, and yet here we are having orcs siege this little town.
Yeah.
And it's pulling a lot of the same kind of beats as Helm's Deep does. And why?
There's even a moment before the orcs attack this pointless little village. Like, why is this little village so important? Like, that's what I couldn't work out. Like, why this place? What is so instrumental about them having to attack this place? And why is Elfman, what's his name?
Elfman.
Why is he so gung-ho about needing to save this little village? And why is he not getting help from his elf tribe? Like, it didn't make sense. Why? Everything was just a constant why. But there was a moment when Bronwyn, the lady that he likes, and her son are having a conversation, and I shit you not, he's like, "Tell me that thing that you used to tell me when I was a kid and I was scared." And she's like, she literally quotes Samwise. She quotes Sam when because she goes, "In the end, this shadow is all but a passing thing."
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
That's something that kind of drove me nuts about the show, is kind of what you're saying, is that there's a lot of Lord of the Rings fan pandering that I found irritating in the show. Like, kind of like what you're saying, like the repeat basically of Helm's Deep, using Samwise Gamgee's lines. But for me, a big thing that irritated me is, so I love film scores, I love television scores,
Same.
you know where I'm going with this. I was so irritated when I found out that like Howard Shore was going to do some collaboration with Bear McCreary, because I was like, this is pandering to the original Lord of the Rings audience, try to entice them in, because that's one of the things that was so iconic about the films was Howard Shore's score. He wrote it like an opera, and it comes through in the film. But the thing is, as I was like, this is pandering, and to me that kind of made my first thought was, it wasn't, oh cool, Howard Shore, it was, oh, they know this won't be very good, and so this is the way to try to draw us in.
Thank you.
Bear McCreary is a phenomenal composer. He does fantastic.
I agree.
They should have let him have full control and create 100% his own score, because what they were making, it's not Peter Jackson's world. Don't emulate Peter Jackson's world. Like, if you're going to try to create something new in the Middle-earth world or in Tolkien's world, make something completely new.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And even some of like the artwork, some of the scenery was also, they filmed it in New Zealand as well. So like even a lot of that kind of coming in, and a lot of the artwork, they clearly were replicating a little bit again from the Lord of the Rings, which honestly doesn't make sense since we're looking at stuff hundreds of years before the events of Lord of the Rings. Anyway.
Like, I love that. Thank you. Yes.
I'm like, don't pander to the fans to try to draw us in. Like the fans will come if they want to. Get new fans. Like, just do that. That would be a more authentic show, and I probably would have enjoyed it much more had they just done it that way, even if it didn't hold true to the source material.
No, absolutely.
Yes. I think because we were talking earlier about like how to, adaptation and what makes a good adaptation, and Jackson's, the reason Jackson's was so good is because it was so, as I was saying, so faithful to the spirit of Tolkien and Tolkien's work.
Because they acknowledged that it was good, you know what I mean?
Even if Tolkien himself may not have liked it. you know, the fans liked it because it was so true to it. And I think about other things like, because as you were saying, Rebecca, you know, if they had deviated from the timeline but still retained the essence and did something interesting, it could still work. Because I think about the Bourne Identity series, the Bourne Supremacy and the Bourne Ultimatum are they have nothing in common with Robert Ludlum's books of the same title, other than the fact that they both feature Jason Bourne. I love the books. They're great, but I also love the original Bourne trilogy. 2 and 3, despite having nothing to do with what the original source material was, are still two terrific films, because even though they don't adhere to the plot of the books, they adhere to the essence of Jason Bourne, that character, that world, and it works, right? And again, I think you could have done something with Rings of Power that might have jiggled with the timeline a little bit, might have put characters in places where they maybe shouldn't have been, but still done something interesting with that.
The through line, yeah, like it all just depends on what you're trying to tell with that. Like if it's going to make sense, if it's going to be something satisfactory and it's something that, like you said, like it can be true to the spirit of it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter, because like a lot of the times when I was watching, I don't know, this might be a little bit of a controversial thing to say, coming from me especially, because Luke, you know, you've known me for a good 10 plus 15, 17, I don't know how many years anymore. And you know me and like Hobbit movies, like that whole thing. And you would know that I would be like, but you know, he didn't have to, you know, like, Thorin didn't have to look like this. He should have been 200 years old. You know what I mean? And so me saying, I think it wasn't a bad idea. Like conceptually, like I don't think it was a bad idea that Halbrand, his name is, that he was, for example, like Sauron, just because it would keep people kind of guessing, because everyone would know, like Anatar, Lord of the Gifts, you know, if he shows up, we know, like all the Tolkien fans would be like, that's him. And so like to keep people kind of guessing, I was like, you know, that could work. It could work. Like something like that could work. You can mix and match it together just to make it work. But in this case it didn't, because it was kind of not only was it pointless to me because everything else was boring, but he just I lost my train of thought, but there we go.
Well, here's a question for you both then. So obviously, yes, Halbrand turns out to be Sauron, which was the most obvious thing in the show. One of the most obvious things, apart from Gandalf being Gandalf. And you know, and what drove me nuts is both of those characters were adhering to the J.J. Abrams mystery box bullshit. And there is a time and a place for mystery. Trying to mystify who these two individuals are, I think, was redundant, because we know who they are. What do we gain from finding out that they are these people who we know who they are? So yeah, my general question is like, what, I guess for Rebecca then, like what were your initial thoughts on this, on what they did with Sauron via this Halbrand character?
Yeah, like I thought it was also, like you're saying, kind of like it's redundant. It was like the problem is, in a way, again, this is pandering to Lord of the Ring fans, because they'll be like, "Ooh, they'll probably know," but it's so obvious that like it takes away the surprise. It makes it kind of lame. And for me, the big thing was, you know, Gandalf coming in. I mean, immediately within an instant, I'm like, "Oh, that's Gandalf. Why are we even making it a mystery?" Because the source material is that, again, in the appendices where they were supposed to be taking the material for the show, it explains very clearly the Istari were specifically brought to Middle Earth for these reasons, and they were fully formed. They knew who they were. They were in their role. There's no like stranger having to kind of, you know, figure things out. The only thing I liked was that it showed how Gandalf developed a good relationship with hobbits. That I could appreciate, since they kind of take him in right away, from what I remember. And that was like the one thing I'm like, that's okay. But otherwise, I'm like, they're fully formed. They're not like these mysterious creatures coming in. They all have a very specific role. There's 5 of them. And Gandalf is doing his things. Saruman is going to be the leader. You have Radagast the Brown. You've got a blue one. I forget his name. And there's one more, I think, a green one maybe. I forget.
Another blue one.
There's two blue. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and like they didn't need to build that out. In fact, it would have been so much more interesting if they had actually kind of made that clear.
Yeah.
Who they were and how the elves deliberately brought them in to help things out. That would have been so much more interesting. I think it actually would have broadened the world and it could really set things up so much more. And again, it's a lost opportunity.
It's a lost opportunity, and also it would. But the thing is that it opens up opportunities to kind of develop how this process would go, like with the Istari coming in, and seeing like we have to like what happens, how do they get there, like what's their relationship with like when they get to the Grey Havens, and then where do they go and all that sort of stuff, right? But the thing is that I don't think that anyone who was working on this really wanted to take the effort to do it.
Well, no, I mean half of this show is made up stuff. It's not from Tolkien. It's they had their own story that they wanted to tell.
90% of it is.
Well, and something else that really bothered me, like kind of going back to like the reveal of Sauron, is that the thing is, in the source material, everyone knows who Sauron is because he was a servant of Morgoth, who is the ultimate biggest bad. Like Sauron was his like little henchman who really wasn't even a big deal in the scheme of things, but it created a very good story. But he was the henchman of Morgoth, who was like a massive war that like almost destroyed all of Middle Earth, and they managed to defeat him. But everyone kind of knew who Sauron was. And it wasn't until he himself kind of began to create power for himself that he became a big deal. So again, I'm like, they didn't need to build this up. In fact, again, it would have been more interesting story if they could be like, oh God, this like our enemy's soldier is coming back. Like that would have been so much more interesting.
Oh yeah.
Like, so much,
especially
like,
with no, totally. And in this case, we just have like Galadriel saying the Dark Lord will return or something like that, and it's just it's repeating Lord of the Rings again.
Yes, relentlessly. And also, so another thing is like, if I'm not mistaken, so Mount Doom was already around. This show creates Mount Doom, creates Mordor in a day, which I just thought was absolutely ridiculous.
No, instant evil.
But Morgoth had connections to Mount Doom. So I don't understand why they made this big mystery about what is this Southlands, what is this area.
Because they're trying to make an origin story that doesn't exist because the origin has long been there. Like none of this, like everything, they're like, oh, it's the start of everything. No, it's not. It's been there for thousands of years, since like the first age, like since the dawn of Middle Earth's time. So, but they were trying to like create a weird origin story, like, oh, it just kind of happens now. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's already been there. Like everyone kind of already has the reputation. Everyone knows what those lands are, and that's why they're always avoided. Like,
and again, it goes back to the J.J. Abrams mystery box stuff. They turned everything we already knew into a mystery box to reveal it for us to be like, we already knew this. It's like, to me, it was quite baffling. It was really like in what was episode 7, I think it was, when Isildur is trapped in a burning building. And I was like, oh, what's going to happen to Isildur? Well, we know what's going to happen to Isildur.
Exactly, we know.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. It's like creating suspense when there's none to be had. Because, like you just said, we know Isildur's going to be fine because he's going to be fighting in that major battle against Sauron. And when he gets and then he gets the ring. Like, we know this.
Right.
Even if you haven't seen the movies, you know this, probably.
Exactly. Like, it's ingrained in pop culture now. It is as well known probably as I Am Your Father, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
This is the level of cultural knowledge that people have of Lord of the Rings. And this show is pretending like no one knows a lick about it.
Yeah, like they're probably kind of thinking like the fans will go, oh, exciting. And instead it's like, well, no, it's super obvious, actually. Make it more surprising if you can. And you could.
And what's so weird to me is both Payne and McKay in interviews kept saying that, you know, when they were putting this show together, they just, quote, kept going back to the books, back to the books, back to the books.
Back to the books.
You clearly didn't, because 90% of this show has nothing to do with the books.
Yeah.
Like, I was so, honestly,
the
fact that Mordor was created by someone inserting a sword key into a mountain.
Man, I can't handle that.
Like National Treasure.
Like this, like it's like National Treasure, like Nicolas Cage and National Treasure kind of stuff. I
It's
was
insane. When I
yes.
watched that, I was just, wait, is this what?
Like, what is this, like reverse
It's great.
Excalibur or something like that? Like,
Oh,
I don't know. There was just, I
man, we
don't
can
know.
go over all these like little details. Like,
What
I
were
don't know,
you?
like for like on the grand scale of things,
Mm,
did you all like kind of have a feeling? Because this was kind of one of the things that kept bugging me. It was in the back of my head all the time when watching the show. We see Numenor. It's supposed to be like 3 times Gondor. You know what I mean? It's the
Yeah.
but
it's the
it doesn't feel
big
like it.
big deal. And then we have Lindon. We have all the other places, Neregion and all this, and many elven like
Lindon, a
strongholds.
short walk away from Moria.
And like I'm just saying, like we're like let's keep that in mind. This is where like the elves are kind of like in their prime, sort of like in Middle Earth, and then we have we have like a strong kingdom of Numenor, because it's so different than in the Third
Mm,
Age, in when Lord of the Rings takes place, because in Lord of the Rings everything is in decline, right? That's the whole
yes.
point. Everything is wild, kind
Yeah.
of, because like Gondor used to be a much bigger kingdom, and now it's just Minas Tirith, and they don't even have their capital anymore, stuff like that. So this is supposed to be massive. This is supposed to be like
Yeah.
teeming with like order and
Yeah.
kingdoms and all that stuff, and it feels, every episode felt
Mm,
like it was just a camp somewhere. Like it's just like a couple of
Yeah.
people living in a house, and then they're going
yes.
to visit the dwarves over there, with it's just 3 guys, like one family.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like the entire time. Does that did it feel like that to you guys at all?
Rebecca, go on.
Rebecca.
Yeah. I I don't know. It's hard for me to put my finger on like what bothered me so much, but I think I like what you just said, Phil, about how everything just kind of felt like camp. And because I
Mm,
felt that very much, like even in the very first episode when you see the hobbits, they almost seem like initially nomadic. And I was like, hobbits weren't nomadic. It's not in their nature to be nomadic. And I know these guys actually weren't hobbits. I think they were more related to the stores, which are kind of like related to hobbits.
Harfoots.
Yeah. But
Harfoots.
they're still very much similar at the core. It's not in their nature. And I was like, this felt wrong to me. And I don't know, even like, I don't know. It's as we got closer to when the show aired, I don't know what it was exactly that made me start doubting it. I think
Mm,
I think I saw a trailer. I think honestly, it was also seeing Galadriel in armor, which I understand what they were trying to do with her character, but
talk about that.
she didn't, in the source material, she doesn't fight like that.
No.
She's very much like kind of on the sides with her wisdom, but she doesn't actually like fight in it. And I know what they're trying to do, like build her up into this powerful female character, which she is. She's phenomenal. She's amazing. But it also kind of, it made her seem she almost seemed a little too human for me.
Yeah,
In a
she
way.
was stupid. Her
Yeah.
character is stupid.
Yeah, like the whole point
It is
is that
stupid.
they're the wisest beings.
Yes.
No one is wiser than them. No
Yeah.
one has more foresight than the elves, and yet she seemed very human. And I was like, it's not how she should be. She would actually be, again, more interesting if
Yes.
they kept her within kind of like what an elf was supposed to be, especially a leader of elves like
You
she was.
compare her to Kate Blanchett's version in Lord of the Rings. I mean, she's on screen for such a short period of time.
Yeah.
But she leaves one of the biggest impacts
Yes.
on the franchise.
Yes.
She is majestic. She is just fucking awesome.
She's
Mhm.
one of the like the primary like faces you kind of think of when you
Yeah.
think of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. I
Amazing.
even love her scene in the Hobbits, the Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
In there, she comes back and she is awesome.
Like
I mean,
that
you
was
can crouch all you want, Phil, but like the stuff that's in the Hobbits that's added, that's that stuff. I'm like, that was fine because they were playing with some of Tolkien's extra material to, whether they needed to do that or not, whatever. But I
Yeah.
still like what they did because it added a little bit of extra stuff.
It did,
But-
and it tied into Lord of the Rings really directly because
Yes.
Tolkien hadn't initially planned to create sequels, but what they did is they took that extra information he did to connect it directly, and it was done brilliantly. Like,
Yes.
that's how
I think
the
so.
show, like the show wanted it to kind of pander to Lord of the Rings audience. They should have made stronger connections.
Yeah, I agree. I think I know people kind of jokingly call her Warrior Gladriel and stuff like that, and it was silly. I didn't. There was something about the, sometimes I'm just sort of like the character is poorly written and et cetera, et cetera. But this is, to me, I think it's also a mixture of not just poorly written characters, but poorly acted character.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people I do not know outside of this show. Maybe in other things they are great and good. This could just be the directors of these episodes are terrible and
They
can't
were
give the right
like the
performances.
directing
Yes.
across the board. I'm sorry to say this, but like it's like I've like like usually with shows like this that are this high caliber, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Usually you don't notice directing or editing or kind of pacing issues as much because they're all kind of like that's kind of like the thing that when it's done well, it's done without you noticing. You're just focusing on the story. But in this, I don't like every shot just didn't have that authenticity to it. It didn't have that feeling that makes it work that every like good and decent movie has. And it's just it's blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Also, where's Galadriel's husband?
Yeah, where is he? Like,
why is he not in the picture? And
Tell me where is
it's all
for much desire to speak with him.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean it's very to me it's very pandery and sort of agenda-y. It's like we don't want her to be linked to. She doesn't need no man, but she should have a child at this point, if I'm not mistaken, and she should be with. Yeah, and I'm like, these kind of radical changes. I'm like, actually, this is where you begin to lose me because these are more than just kind of minor changes of placing characters in different points in time where they might not be, but you're now fundamentally ruining what we know of this character and what we were excited to see.
I think also what kind of bothered me about her is that they tried a little too hard to almost make her a conflicted or flawed character as well.
Yeah.
Because again, being an elf, she's not supposed to be. But at the same time, in Lord of the Rings, she very clearly demonstrates she is a flawed character because she knows power will corrupt her.
Yes.
And so that's already there. And if you kind of, again, play that up into who she is, that would have made it so much more interesting. And if you wanted to make a connection or if you wanted to do a pandering, it would have been kind of similar to Aragorn's feelings in the films about not wanting the power of being king, even though in the book he was all about it. But but that to me actually would not have been a pandering connection. I think that would have been actually a very interesting comparison.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. That's a good one.
Biffer in the comments says power of the rings or the rings of power ruin the franchise like when the Last Jedi ruined Star Wars. Do we agree with that? What do we think about that?
So controversial.
Oh God.
I liked those movies, but I also don't have like I'm not emotionally invested in Star Wars the way I am in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So I kind of went in watching them and was like, I think it's fun, but again, I don't. The very first Star Wars movie I ever watched was The Phantom Menace. Okay, so
I'm so sorry.
When in theaters, so I didn't know who Anakin was. So beyond that, I probably should not talk about it at all.
That's fair enough. I understand the sentiment there, and I think it's one of those things where even I mean I'm more of a Star Trek fan than I am a Star Wars fan. So I would say
that makes me the biggest Star Wars fan in this room.
It does.
Apparently.
I almost kind of see it as one of those things where I just have to like cut it off. Like that doesn't exist for me. Rings of Power doesn't exist. Star Trek Discovery doesn't exist. Strange New Worlds doesn't exist. Because in my because I want to keep my headcanon intact. And like I said, if it's a bad adaptation, it's not gonna stay. Again, comparing it to The Bourne Supremacy and Ultimatum, completely divergent from the books, but amazing, well written, well shot, well acted films, and I love them as a alternative take on that on both those books.
Yeah. For me, go on. No, go on. Oh, okay, it's me. Then it's me. So for me, like it's just so like they made attempts to make it be like this isn't Peter Jackson's, like it's not that visual universe, it's not that, so we're doing our own thing. I mean, they kind of lied
until we saw Sauron the Balrog and pretty much everything else.
Yeah. The fell beast, you saw that monster at the beginning. It's like, what are you trying to do? I just don't understand that. It's just like so it's easy for me to just cut that out, especially since it doesn't engage me in any Anyway,
Yeah.
for the Hobbit movies, once again, Luke knows this, but Rebecca, you probably do not know this. I just detested them. They were horrible. I
I
really
wasn't a fan
didn't.
either.
I
I
didn't
actually
like them.
I liked the first Hobbit film, An Unexpected Journey, because I felt like of all the three films, that was the only one that captured the essence of what the Hobbit was supposed to be. Like
Yeah.
kind of like
I know what
a
you mean.
fun romp, really is what it was. But I just felt like you could tell Peter Jackson did not want to do those films.
Yes,
You
I
could just
agree.
tell his heart wasn't in it. There didn't seem to be a camaraderie amongst the cast the way there was with the original cast.
I agree.
They relied too much on CGI, and so it took away some of the authenticity. But also, I felt to me that the movies were very much like put them into 3 films. You don't need to do that. You're like the Battle of Five Armies is like 5 pages, and Bilbo's unconscious for all of it. Like,
Yeah, no, it's true.
so I felt like the movies were nothing but they were bloated cash grabs for Warner
Yes,
Brothers.
I
That's
agree.
all
They
they
were.
were. And that's why I was like, it just bothered me a bit. Like I did like
Yeah.
some stuff. Like I did love seeing like that council um
Yes,
that was taken
was
from the
cool.
appendices that's not in the book. Like I thought that was one of my I think that was my favorite scene actually in the entire Hobbit trilogy.
I think mine too.
Yeah. But
Actually, anything involving Gandalf and the necromancer and that council,
Mhm.
that's all the stuff in The Hobbit that I really love.
Yeah.
Okay.
I loved seeing that because I knew where that was going.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I
for
agree
me,
that
no,
go on.
For me, it was always the things that were closest to the book that I was the most engaged in. So it was Gollum and Bilbo, because
Yes.
that was very close.
That was
And
done
it
well.
was
Yes.
it was so interesting because like once again, Rebecca, you probably don't know this, but when I was 18, I really had this like 17, 18, I had this like really passionate desire to want to direct the Hobbit movie.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I did. And I even like sent my portfolio out, 17 by the way, sent my portfolio out to like different movie producers and production companies. Um, Ken Kamins, who was the manager for Peter Jackson at the time, his assistant emailed me back, the only person who emailed me back and said, you know, oh, this is really good. You're very talented, you know, blah, 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 stuff like that. He would send a really nice message. Anyway, what I wanted to say was I was very unhappy going to see the Hobbit films when they were coming out because I wanted to make them. And I was so like, on one end, I was just like, please, I don't want them to be good because I want to make the good one. And then on the opposite side as well, I was like, but if it is good and it's not as good as like if it's not following the book, but it's still good, and I'm gonna be torn. I'm so scared. So I was like terrified to watch the first movie when it came out in 2012 because that personal connection I had because I put a lot of like effort into like sketching and drawing and you know doing all kinds of like making a pitch to do the Hobbit films. So when it came out and I watched it, I was just kind of relieved because I knew it wasn't very good. But at the, like what but my point was is that even though the Hobbit movies I didn't like too much, at least they were entertaining. I can go back and watch them and be entertained, whereas Rings of Power was just this. It just went in one ear out the other for me. And that's kind of where it went. I totally forgot what I was leading up to, but I just remembered I wanted to say that.
It's all right. I think we can kind of wrap up with Lord of the Rings and chat
we can talk about it all the time.
The last episode of this because there were quite a few things in this last bit that I just again were just the pinnacle of cheesy, lazy writing to me. One in which was when Sauron finally reveals himself. Again, we get that almost verbatim quote from Lord of the Rings in which he says, you know, I will make you a queen stronger than the foundations of the earth. And I looked at the screen and I was like, fuck you, show. Like, this is bullshit. Like, why are you taking that epic line? Like, this show has not earned the right to take that line from Galadriel, from the Fellowship of the Ring, and like bastardize it in the way that they have done here. They did the same thing with Gandalf when at the end of the episode she's like he's going away with Nori. For some reason him and the Hobbit are going to go on an adventure. Why? Oh,
I hated that so much.
We have no explanation of that, but she's like, where are we going to go? And he's like, follow your nose. I'm like, Are you
No.
serious, show? Why are you so lazy? Like, this is not, as you were saying, Rebecca, it's pandering.
Yeah.
It's not the right kind of pandering.
Yeah,
It's not the
exactly.
pandering that gets you excited. It's like, you don't have a good line, so you're just going to throw this kind of crap at us. And ultimately, the end of the season, like, does it excite you for anything to come?
No, I don't care at all.
No, absolutely not.
I don't care.
You know, and I don't know, this drove me nuts as well, because from what I understand, before the Sauron creates the One Ring, the last set of rings to be made are the elf rings. So why is it in this show the first set of rings to be made are the elf rings? Because
Dude, I don't know.
now that Sauron has been revealed, now that Galadriel knows, also, side note, why the hell did Galadriel not tell Elrond and Celebrimbor that, oh yeah, Halbrand, he's Sauron, so we should be doing something about this? Like, why did she keep that to
Also,
herself?
the fact that he escaped can prove that too, because he's not going to be back. So it's
right?
like,
Because also, in addition to that, it's like, okay, well, if Sauron is meant to be this interesting guy who comes in and manipulates and all that kind of stuff, how in the world are we going to get that now that we know who he is?
do you think he's going to come back? He's going to be like, hey
Yes.
guys, it's Anatar now.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's the only way they
hey.
can do it, honestly. Like, they've done it badly
Yeah.
and they can't really redeem it. So they
Yeah.
just got to keep doing now what they're doing. And Galadriel has to be within this weird I didn't tell them conflict, and that's got to continue for drama's sake. And it's just like it's
lazy.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like saying lazy, but it does.
No, but it
feel-
is. You're exactly
Anyway.
right.
It's absolutely lazy. It was shocking. There was a couple of things I just want to cap off with on Lord of the Rings before we get into Rings of Power, because what's interesting about Rings of Power is both of these shows. No, sorry, House of the Dragon, is that Rings of Power and House of the Dragon is going to happen all night, guys. So just gotta go.
All good.
Both of these shows are prequels to, you know, this other stuff that's out there, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all that kind of stuff. One of which has just been incredible, and that is House of the Dragon. And it's just, I mean, if I was involved with the Rings, watching A, the discourse online, and B, the House of the Dragon, I would be so embarrassed. Because, I mean, as we were saying earlier, the idea of maybe having these perspectives of the five wizards involved in this show, coming in, knowing who they are, knowing what they're about, adding some urgency to the show, because ultimately, you know, we think of Lord of the Rings, the plot is that the urgency is we need to destroy the ring to defeat Sauron. The urgency of the Rings of Power is
there's none.
Exactly.
Like, didn't they design it to be like multiple seasons? So of course, as a result, they're going to be like dragging it out for ages. But what's irritating is like they're dragging out something of what we know is going to happen. Like,
right?
Yeah.
And in a way, like, some could argue, well, like House of the Dragons is doing that too. But no, we'll get into why it's 1,000 times better. But like Lord of the Rings is just dragging out something like so unnecessary.
Yes.
Unnecessary.
Yes. And there was this interesting quote here in the Hollywood Reporter.
Oh, look at that. Use it.
From these
Flex
guys.
That big screen of yours.
Yes. So it's interesting because they both admit here. It says here, they readily admit, for instance, that some of the first season episodes lack the urgency fans expect from Tolkien adaptations. Quote, one of the big things we learned was even when it's a small scene, it always has to tie back into the larger stakes. And I think that right there tells everything you need to know about their intelligence as writers and storytellers. The fact that they have to say, oh yeah, in hindsight, next time we'll make sure that these small scenes tie into the larger story.
Yeah.
Because you had no story.
They basically violated the rule of Chekhov's gun, right? Like,
yes,
you know, putting in all this stuff but not actually relating it. So as a result, I was like, this just feels useless.
Yes. Like, the other thing that annoyed me.
Keep going.
I was reading this other quote from these guys. Yeah, and this is the article in the Hollywood Reporter, in which they're saying that Sauron in season 2 was going to be like Walter White. You know, he's going to be more like, you know, that kind of character. And I'm just like, this is cringy. This is so cringy.
Dude, this is like Colin Trevorrow saying that the Giganotosaurus in Jurassic World is going to be like the Joker. Remember that?
Yes.
That's what he said.
Yes. And yeah, so they say here, they're like, okay, so, you know, what's in the Lord of the Rings books is an all-encompassing evil. This is about Sauron. That everyone is afraid of and is so powerful, it doesn't even have to be manifested physically. He's the image. He's the image of an eye in Peter Jackson's films. He's the eye in the tower. So they say we felt Sauron should be a character in his own right. He already is. There's plenty of information of Sauron being a
What he
character in
does
his own
and,
right.
yeah.
We don't need you to do that, by the way, guys. And we wanted to study the currents running within him in a way that hopefully would reward audiences as they follow him moving forward as he becomes the Dark Lord. He should already be the Dark fucking Lord in this show. Like, he is Sauron. He is the next big bad, after Morgoth.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Just make that known. There's no reason to like make that a mystery. There's no reason to put that off.
Yeah, no, none at all. Because again, by this point, Mordor should already exist. I'm pretty sure Barad-dûr should also exist at this point. You know, so it's like what he should be manipulating. Like imagine you have, as you were saying, the 5 wizards are out there doing some stuff. You know. But at the same time, this whole season, you are following Sauron manipulating people. And like the 5 wizards don't know who he is. And the elves, and that's interesting. The audience can be in on it because we already know you're not doing anything to excite us by hiding who he is. But the interesting thing that you could do is watch and see how he is manipulating people and getting away with stuff. Basically, he should be the Joker. We need to know he's the villain. We should have seen him doing stuff. That makes him way more interesting, and it makes a much more compelling story. And they have completely screwed the pooch on this show. I think.
We got some interesting comments over here.
Okay, what? Let's see what people say, and then we'll move into House of the Dragon. Biver says, I prefer show don't tell type of storytelling. Well, that is what you call good storytelling.
Yeah.
With
Corey says, in my opinion, they fell in love with the Galadriel Sauron Starcrust mystery reveal dream sequence scene. Just love the idea and backfilled season 1 entirely to serve it. Hi, by the way, hello, Corey.
Yeah.
And we've not seen you here before, Corey, so welcome.
Welcome.
I agree with that. I think that is the reason why we don't have Galadriel's husband, because they wanted to tease this romance between Sauron and Galadriel, and it was terrible.
There's no place in this story, in any iteration whatsoever. I can't. I just no.
Yeah. And Wahab is just mentioning that he's being compared to Walter White in the next season. I'm like, you've screwed the pooch, because this should have been season 1. Season 1, you could have done that right out the gate, and that would have been interesting.
You could.
But then what's interesting, yes. And then we come to the House of the Dragon, which I think
let's get
I'm glad to leave this to the end, because I, for the most part, have nothing but praise to say for House of the Dragon. But Rebecca, start us off. You were saying that there's a reason why House of the Dragon is working so well, despite it being another prequel in the very same vein as The Rings of Power.
I think one of the big things is that from the absolute get-go, with House of the Dragon, you're immediately put back into the world of Westeros, and it connects brilliantly because they are taking the exact source material required from George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood. And as a result, we're put back into the world. We know who the characters are. We know who the families are. And there are, and even like being here's a Lannister, here's a Stark, here, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we know those characters, but it's not a weird throwback because they're supposed to be there. So when you're watching it, you're kind of like, yes, this is Westeros. Yes, this is the story. You're put back immediately. You're not seeing gratuitous changes. You know exactly who the characters are. And even the fact that, like, it's the same composer and it's the same opening theme music that works because we're in the exact same world and we're in the same places. We're in King's Landing and we know it's King's Landing without anybody telling us. We see Dragonstone, which I don't remember. Do we see it in Game of Thrones, Dragonstone? I can't remember actually. But if we don't, it works because we've heard about it. And so the music brings us back directly into the world that we're supposed to be. They are not pandering to original audiences at all. If anything, they're like, this is for the original audience. We know this and we welcome new fans because you don't need to have watched Game of Thrones to understand what's going on House of the Dragon as well. And so this is just and they've kept the music quite consistent, but they've also changed it enough to fit into this time period. Like, they're definitely making it that this is a directly connected history. They're not trying to create anything new with it except by going with what the source material actually is and actually adhering to it.
I completely agree with that. It reminds me a little bit of, I was going to say a little bit of The Hobbit, in that the score to The Hobbit does that a little bit as well. It has the Lord of the Ring tune, but it changes mildly. And what's interesting to me is I really did not like Game of Thrones. I stomached the first season and didn't go beyond that. But I tell you what got me interested, and that was, I'm a big fan of Matt Smith. I loved Matt Smith since he was the Doctor in Doctor Who, and I was like, okay, and I've always been disappointed that he's never, like, kind of skyrocketed in terms of, stardom, because I think he's a terrific actor. Yes, he's been in The Crown, and The Crown is probably the best thing he's done since Doctor Who. But after that, he's been in some rocky stuff. So I was drawn to this show because he was in it, and we watched the first episode, and everything about it just completely gripped me. I was like, these are three-dimensional characters. This is a lived-in world. This is a fascinating family drama, and I want to see how this plays out. I think that's what initially hooked me with this show. What were you going to say, Phil?
I was just going to say, Rebecca, I don't know anything about Game of Thrones at all. I watched season 1 back in 2011, and like Luke, I didn't like it and I didn't continue. So it just went by throughout the years until I heard what a disaster season 8 was. And then I was just like, oh, I got to see what that's all about. But that's about it. I still don't know anything about Game of Thrones. So this is the first time of me just trying again. And I am looking forward to that next episode now, after episode 9. I mean, after every other episode, I was like, I can't wait for Sunday or whenever it's coming out. And it's like,
I think that's the thing. It really grips you in an interesting way that Rings of Power fails to do. But it is different enough to Game of Thrones. And I think the big thing for me is with Game of Thrones, it was very much, it didn't feel as personal. Game of Thrones felt very political, in that it was a political drama. And I think that's what didn't interest me. Is I was like, I don't care about this made up political drama. Whereas House of Dragon, making it small scale, making it personal, interpersonal drama within this world, I'm sold. I like Corey's comment where they say, regarding House of Dragon, that it's actually canonical. Who would have thought that would work?
It's interesting. So my youngest brother is, he's a big fan. He's read all of Fire and Blood, and he's told me about some changes he made that he was like for instance, Alicent's character apparently in Fire and Blood is actually 20 years older than Rhaenyra, and they weren't friends. He said that in the show, though, he actually thinks it works so much better that they made her Rhaenyra's best friend in the same age, because he felt it actually made the story so much more compelling and hooked and you in
made it more tragic.
So He's like, yeah,
Sad.
exactly, more tragic in everything. So he's like, every single change that they made from Fire and Blood, which isn't very much, but every change he made has just made the story better.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was fascinated. Again, that's one of those moments where it's like, you know what? I like that change from the source material because I thoroughly enjoyed watching their wonderful friendship be completely manipulated and torn apart by Otto, and her Alicent just kind of being really a victim in all of this, and then forced into this world, and now as the years go by, she is just you feel bad for both of them, for both Rhaenyra and Alicent, but for very different reasons. And you know, the thing is, the irony is that Viserys, the king, he's just so ignorant to everything that's going on that you don't even you can't really hate him. He's just sort of the doofus that's caught in the middle of this, you know, this stuff that's going on behind his back. Um, James Benmore has a question for us.
James Benmore.
James. So James, he asks, how are we finding the various time jumps throughout the series? Do you find them disorienting, or do you think they add to the pace?
Either or. Like I don't mind them at all
personally.
Yeah.
I thought it made the pacing quite interesting, and it kind of keeps the story moving forward. Like sometimes the word like, okay, yeah, everyone's older again, okay, but I didn't mind it personally, and actually, and so because the story's propelling forward so well. Actually controversial. Like I know you two haven't seen most of Game of Thrones, but season 7, one of the big criticisms was that the time was moving too fast. But I actually thought it picked up the pacing on the show to actually, because where, you know, there's a bit where like Jon Snow is traveling to meet Daenerys, and that happens in like one episode, whereas in a previous season it would have been at least half the season. And I was like, no, we're getting to the point. This is great. So I like this. And also I think they're doing the time jumps well, because sometimes with the time jump, it can actually flatten character development because you don't see what that development is. But I find that they're putting it in brilliantly, just in small snatches of dialogue. Like when Rhaenyra had that conversation with Leonor, you know, him being like, you know, I can't be a good husband. I'm not a good man. She's like, no, you are. And that tells you exactly how their relationship is.
Yes.
And that they do love and respect each other just in their own way. And they're letting themselves be their authentic selves. And so you can see, even though it's a time jump, you don't see what their marriage is. You know, instantly it's in its own way. It's actually a very good one. So like, this is the sort of thing I really, really enjoy about the show. You see in the time jumps how Alicent very much is a victim of her circumstances. She's had no choice in this. She's been played as a pawn. And now she basically has to do what she can to kind of preserve herself and her children, because it's the only control she can have. And even that is barely hers. And again, you see that just like in facial expressions and tiny pieces of dialogue. Like they do it so well.
Yes. I completely agree with that. Like 99%. I have minor my criticisms of House of the Dragon are very minor. One is about the time jumps. Mostly I'm absolutely fine with them. I think they have generally worked. I do think that some of the time jumps have sort of disenfranchised other characters, other peripheral characters, particularly Matt Smith's wives.
I knew you were going to say that, actually.
I was when he kills his first wife. Spoilers, by the way. Spoilers. When he kills his first wife, I mean, that was shocking, and I was fine with the twist in the story, because Game of Thrones is always shocking, but the scenes after that sort of kind of lead you to believe that there is going to be conflict with her family, because her father or brother confronts Matt Smith at that party later that night. And I'm like, okay, this is where his story might be going. And then that is kind of tailed off completely when we don't follow any more of that. So that is one particular one. I also feel like when the kids were a little bit younger, it kind of rushes through them a little bit too much. And in particular with Rhaenyra and her lover, We didn't really get a chance to
Yeah.
really know him, really understand that dynamic. So these are, I mean, again, I do have to caveat this with saying these are minor gripes, because on the whole, this show does well to, on a surface level, at least get you up to speed and understand what's going on. It's just that I think some of this stuff could have done well to, maybe have had 1 or 2 episodes extra with some of these other characters, where others just got 1 episode or a scene. Particularly Matt Smith's second wife, the I can't remember the lady's name.
Lana?
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
When she, when she was pregnant, she's having a kid. I wanted to see more of her. I was really intrigued by her character, and I was hoping to see more, and then we didn't.
No.
But then also, again, with some of these time jump things, it when she went to to go have the dragon burn her, fry her, right? That was a particular moment where I was, which kind of leads to my second gripe of the show, is some of these characters, their motivations do come across as a little bit unclear to me, because I've never read the books, so I don't know what's going on. Her doing that, I was like, well, I don't really understand why she's doing that. I understand that Matt Smith was given the choice of basically do what Viserys did to his first wife with the the C-section that's going to kill her, or what? Is it that they could never get the infant out, or why is she going to do that? I needed a little bit more.
I think the way I kind of interpreted it, I think some other people did too, is that one, she was never going to survive and the child was not going to survive. And so what she did instead is she chose her own death, and she did it the best way she could by doing it with dragons, because, the child was half Targaryen, and, the Valerians also use dragons sometimes. And so this is a way of her choosing her own death by basically, in a way, her family, in the best, most intimate way possible. And it was actually done so well, so heartbreaking, because her dragon didn't want to do it, but her dragon ultimately did, because the dragon understood why.
Yes.
The dragon.
Yes, that's a very good point, because I loved that scene. Despite wanting more to kind of understand stuff, that scene between her and the dragon was very moving. It was like, oh my God, this is fuck.
Yeah.
So yes, that I can see that. I think I needed just, a little bit more. So maybe you can clear this one up for me. There was one other moment where something like this happened, and that was when Sir Criston beat to death Rhaenyra's husband's lover.
What the hell was that all about?
Yeah.
What?
I can't remember his name now, and I can't find it. I had it, but
no, that was Joffrey, wasn't it? This is before they were married, yeah?
Yeah, this is
that was Joffrey, and that's why they named that her newborn child Joffrey. It was after his lover.
That makes sense. Yes, Joffrey. Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I've been trying to I keep trying to think what the reason would be behind Criston Cole beating Joffrey to death, and it was Criston Cole, right? I think it was.
It was. Yeah. Yes, he did it.
I'm honestly not so sure why. Maybe it's because some sort of weird jealousy. I don't know, because basically they're entering into this marriage of a way that they're gonna be able to do things their own way. But I honestly had no idea.
The only way that the way that we sort of read it, which was more Claire than me, because I was like, it's intense and shocking, but I don't know why. But the way Claire sort of read it, and I think I kind of agree with, was that maybe something to do with not wanting to be blackmailed, because the guy essentially comes over and he's like, oh, I know that you're with her, and I'm with him, and maybe that was it.
Maybe, but I don't even. Maybe it's possible, or maybe honestly not. Let's see. In the comment, because he had the suspicion concerning his relationship with Rhaenyra, because there was that conflict. Criston Cole wanted Rhaenyra to run away with him, and she refused him, which of course she was going to.
Of course, yes.
So that could have also been part of it.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we needed this.
Brother.
Yeah, we needed a little something extra to, I think, yeah. Let us know what was going on with some of that stuff.
Let us know in the comments.
Contacting my youngest brother right now.
Yeah, no. I think the only other criticism that I have, and I think this is the one that everyone had, was the pitch black episode.
See, my TV was actually okay. I didn't notice it was pitch black, but what I did notice is that they obviously used a night filter throughout the entire episode.
Yeah.
Like the moon is shining, but everyone's squinting like really hard, and you can always tell when it's a night filter. And I was just like, film it on a dark set, or maybe have it take place like during twilight or something like that.
Yeah, there's always solutions.
But I saw a lot of people complaining it was dark. I think my TV was just pretty good with it, although that episode of the Battle of the Night King in Game of Thrones season 8, people will notice and watching how dark that episode was. Like I could barely see anything in that episode, so I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I think this one was just slightly brighter than that, because I saw from that Game of Thrones episode and I was like, "Whoof!" But what was really funny to me as I was watching that episode, I was like, this is the episode where they released all the promotional stills. Yeah, because I remember seeing Rhaenyra and Matt Smith, Damon, in a desert scene in a bright sunny bit. Yeah. And then when I was watching the show, I was like, oh, these are those stills from that. And okay, yeah. So yeah, definitely day for night.
Yeah.
Not the best thing to do. But it wasn't the worst.
Who knows what it was? Maybe it was time constraints. Maybe it was supposed to be in daytime, and then they're like, let's do it nighttime instead later on. But also, it just kind of annoys me because we have such wonderful digital cameras now. The technology's gone so far.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they handle, the grading for these movies anymore, because I've noticed when people do photochemical processes when it comes to night scenes, they've always lit it wonderfully, in the past with film, because you have to, or else the film isn't going to pick it up. But now with digital, you have such, sensitive sensors to be able to record. What I honestly thought when I watched that scene, I thought it was actually like a full moon, and they actually filmed it at night, because, there are cameras capable of doing that. But yeah, but like what I just don't
shadows give it away.
The shadows give it, and the squinting too.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I wanted to say, like I'm just to refer to the dark stuff in films and shows now. I don't know what's going on. There's one thing that I'm gonna say that was good about Lord of the Rings of Power, was that at least it had a good enough like sort of contrast. It had bright highlights and deep blacks. I think that's what I was ranting to you when I was
yes. Yeah.
Because Game of Thrones is, House of the Dragon and other shows like as nice as pretty as it is, there are many moments where it's just so like everything is just kind of like put into the middle. There aren't any like highlights, and there aren't any shadows. It's just like all kind of crushed together. And I don't understand that. That was my rant. There we go. Just putting that out for everybody who's listening. That's my statement to me.
I think I still mostly like the look of the show. I don't think I have too many complaints about the general color palette of the.
Oh, but me, so
I do. But I think it works. To me, I think it works for the show. I would say if we're comparing to, yes, Lord of the Rings has some more vibrant colors, but Lord of the Rings of Power has some of the worst CGI out there. Like all of their, if you compare like two boat scenes in like House of Dragon boat scene and a Rings of Power boat scene, and the way the Rings of Power, the way the House of the Dragon boat scenes are shot and look, they might not. There's a little bit of offness to them, but I would say they're 90% good and realistic looking. Whereas the Rings of Power ones, you can just tell that boat is not a real boat. You can tell they are not on any sort of water or moving.
No.
And I think that's again one of those things that House of the Dragon has done so well, and that is to make sure that this world in every moment, mostly, feels like a real lived in place. And this interesting side notes, without giving names away because I don't want to get in trouble. But I was at an event the other day, where someone who works at a publishing house was talking about the Rings of Power and House of the Dragon, and for various reasons they were very pro Rings of Power. And I did have to kind of, well, I didn't even bite my tongue, but my jaw dropped to the floor when this individual said that the dragons in the Rings of in House of the Dragon are terribly fake looking. And yes, I was like,
so we're both tilting our heads.
Yes. The table that I was at, everyone went, I'm sorry, what? And this person was like, oh yes, no, they're absolutely terrible. They're dreadful looking. I think they're so fake. And I'm like, but at the same time, this individual was defending the Rings of Power, and I'm like,
yeah.
Did you see that troll scene in the first episode of Rings of Power?
That over-designed troll.
Yeah, you can only take them so seriously then.
No, you couldn't, and it was quite interesting to me because I'm like, I mean, again, the dragons, I mean, they look amazing to me. I think the look, of everything that's going on is quite fun. One of the interesting character things though that I'm absolutely loving is, and I had a conversation about this with James Benmore maybe about a week ago, and that is the character of Sir Criston Cole. I love that he's set up as like the knight in shining armor, and now he's just like a thug. I love that.
It's really interesting because you're absolutely right. Like he was set up to kind of be this like cool character, and Rhaenyra specifically chose him because he was the only one with combat experience and this and this. But then it turns out, as I've seen a lot of people saying online, he's basically turned into like this incel after like Rhaenyra won't run away with him, and he's like so angry all the time, like calling her the C word behind her back and all this, and it's like it's rejected. And so but what's interesting though is that it does give him such like, he clearly has this like anger and resentment that has bubbled into hatred over the years, and this is going to create even more of a conflict and between not just Rhaenyra but like the entire family, and potentially even a conflict with Alicent if she's going to show too much leniency towards Rhaenyra. I have no idea. Like it makes his character quite interesting. He's a loose cannon. It's like on the one hand he seems predictable, on the other hand I think he could be unpredictable.
Just killed a guy in the wedding.
Yeah.
No,
right? Yeah, no, exactly.
Not even that was not the wedding scene, but I was gonna say in the last episode.
Yes.
When the old man was being
Dude,
he breaks the law. Like he's supposed to be sent to the wall or executed for doing that.
What was that about? Yeah.
Like it's crazy. Well, Hobbs says character transformation, House of the Dragon are amazing. They really capture our emotions. I'm always like, damn. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, when he smashed that dude's head down on the table, I was like,
yeah, same. I'm like,
and
the thing is, power he himself has gained somehow.
Yes,
like he was able to do that. He knew he'd get away with it.
Yes,
that's
what I loved about it. I think that's what that scene. I loved how that scene just set up like how evil and corrupted Otto is, and how he's corrupted everyone else around him. And then you have poor Alicent, who's finally starting to kind of wise up to things, and she's obviously conflicted because the night before the king was like, Aegon should be king. She doesn't realize, as we talked about the other day, Rebecca, she doesn't realize that he's referring to Rhaenyra's son. Right. So it adds that interesting complication where she thinks, but at the same time, again?
Sorry.
So there, go on.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, okay. I want to kind of interject, like how you're saying, like Otto doesn't realize that he actually meant Rhaenyra's kid. I think Otto knows. I think Otto knows Viserys well enough to know that Viserys, no matter what, would never ever change.
Oh no, I'm saying Alicent didn't know.
Oh, you meant Alicent. Okay, sorry, never mind.
Yes, Otto definitely.
Otto knows.
Yeah, when she was saying this is what he said, and he was just kind of like, I was like, you knew from his face.
Part
He
of
was
me
like,
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Alicent knows a little bit, like deep down, if Alicent knows, because at this point she's got to being married to Viserys for over 20 years. She herself also has to know his nature, how he would never change his mind. So part of me is kind of thinking like, this is good for her because in a way it's fulfilling her father's wishes.
yes,
And easily,
yes,
and it's not her, and she can like, and it won't be her fault.
yes.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like,
I do, yeah.
so part of me wonders if there's like a part of her that knows, but is like refusing to like let herself believe it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I feel like there was a moment on her face during the coronation scene where she just didn't seem, not that it was leading up to a happy moment anyway, but there was just something about her face that I kind of felt like I think she knows what she's doing is in general quite slimy.
Yeah. Yeah, she knows. She doesn't want her son to be king. She knows better. And he knows he's not supposed to be king either. Or at least till that very last scene with that transformation. But
yes. Wahab says, well, Beesbury, I think that's the guy who he killed, was supposed to either throw out the window or his throat slit by Kristen Cole in the council in the book. But in the story, there's different accounts which one is authentic. Okay.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so no, I'm loving. I love what they've done, what they're doing with that, because I think it's going to create such. I think now that we've gone through all these time jumps, and now I think we should probably be. I don't think there's going to be any more. Will there be more time jumps?
No more time jumps.
Okay.
Yeah. The last time jump we saw was supposed to be the very last one. So this next episode, my brother, he's read it and he's just like, he hasn't told me any spoilers at all, but he's just like, you're not prepared for this last episode. And I'm like,
yay!
I know, right? I'm like, oh my
god. I'm hoping the next season doesn't do time jumps either. I'm hoping that we can kind of sit with these characters for a while now.
Yeah, I have a feeling we probably won't, because I think they had to do the time jumps in order to like really get what the story that they needed to tell for season 1 done. I think so. I'd have a hard time believing them doing like a massive time jump unless we go into like a new set of characters or something like that for whatever reason.
Right.
But I don't. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I would too. And I think we have to just for a moment talk about how great the character of Viserys has been.
Yeah. Like a lot of people I know are like, he's the worst king of all time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
no.
I actually really like Viserys. I think he's actually, like, didn't they call him Viserys the Peaceful? Like, there wasn't any, like, there were the wars with the sand snakes and everything like that. But overall, like, there seemed to be generally prosperity in Westeros under his kingship. And he did try to be as fair as he possibly could, and including with his own family. He didn't seem to let any corruption get to him. At the same time, though, what I find interesting is there's a theory that the Iron Throne rejects him for his decision to make Rhaenyra his heir, and this is why he basically starts decomposing for the rest of it. Like you can see after he names Rhaenyra as his heir, he immediately gets a cut on his finger that doesn't heal. And it kind of starts everything. So so in a way, almost kind of like, Ned Stark was too honorable in Game of Thrones to ever survive beyond the first season. In a way, Viserys almost could be similar. He's too kind to adequately be a tough ruler, like what the Iron Throne requires. So I saw online, someone said it perfectly. Like Viserys would have been great as the second son and just kind of being in charge of some other things, but mostly being a family man.
Yes.
And Daemon probably actually would have been better on the throne.
Yes.
He has that ruthlessness to him.
Yes. I agree with that. What I can't remember is because there is one scene early on with some leeches in the first episode. I do not remember if that is pre or post him declaring Rhaenyra as the successor to the throne.
I think it might have been pre, or no, I don't know actually. I
can't remember, but I still like this. I still like this concept that just him as an individual, he's still being kind of rejected from I do really like this this idea. And I tell you, it was so bittersweet in that second to last episode when they finally have this family dinner. And he gets his happy moment, his one happy moment, and I mean, I kind of expected him to die very, very quickly.
And he knew.
I sort of thought he would maybe last to the final episode, but I was like, not much longer.
No.
But I I am also very intrigued by the character of Aemond.
Yes. In a way, he's like my new favorite. I'm calling him like the new Lord of Chaos. Like I feel like I used to call Daemon Lord of Chaos, but now I'm kind of like they're both like this Lord of Chaos, but on opposing sides. But Aemon, like Daemon is he's smart. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows the nature of people, and he also has compassion within him, like the way he helped Viserys climb onto the throne, gave him his crown back, which by the way was an improvised scene, which I thought was brilliant.
Oh, I love that scene.
Fall off his head, and that was done so brilliantly. Whereas Aemond, he just is like he's raised himself to be a warrior to overcompensate for his weakness as a child and losing his eye, and as a result, he's just I don't know that he's just I don't think he's one dimensional at all whatsoever. There is going to be so much to him, and I'm so intrigued by what's come.
Yeah, I mean, just what they've done so far with him, he's far from one dimensional already. Like there is, you know, there's something interesting about him.
Yes.
And like I like that Lord of Chaos. There is you just you look at him and you're like, I don't know what this crazy guy is going to do. Like it's either going to be okay or he's going to kill us all. Like one of the two.
Yeah, exactly. If he and Daemon like paired up, like if that was ever going to possibly happen in this universe, they would be an unstoppable team.
Right. Yeah. I'm also very intrigued to see how he is going to respond moving forward with his incompetent brother as king, because he seems like where Viserys was trying to be noble, but incompetent. He just seems like lazy incompetent. But that moment at the end where he's like throwing his sword up in the air, getting everyone to cheer, it's almost like he's going to be like ignorant, thinking that he is great when actually he is probably not going to be great. And I think that's going to be fascinating. Now, obviously the big explosive thing about that you know, the penultimate episode was what's her aunt's name?
Rhaenyra. No,
Rhaenys. That's it, Rhaenys.
Yeah.
Boy, when she made her entrance,
that was so good. You're talking about the very end, right?
Like, I'm talking about the very end.
Yes. Oh my god, that was perfectly executed. Like perfectly done. Because like the entire Hightower family, they know how much they've messed up, and they know she's going right to Rhaenyra immediately. And you know, oh my god, it was so good. Like it was also the best way she was able to assert her own power in a way that she had so much power taken away from her. Because like a lot of people were like, you should have been queen, but you couldn't because of the laws or something, whatever. And this is a way for her to finally assert like how powerful she actually is. Not holding back anymore.
No, I loved that. When the floor just exploded and then this giant ass dragon comes out and just stares them down, I'm just like, fuck yeah. Like but Wahab says that he felt the last episode was meh. Wahab, you're crazy. But so he's also saying why didn't she burn them? They were right there. All the coming bloodshed wouldn't have happened if she burned them. It's true, but I mean, you know.
No, I disagree. I think that the bloodshed would have still come because the kingdom was already divided about the succession. You know, the Lannisters would have probably come into their own power at this point, like they do eventually. And it just the war was inevitable, I think, no matter what. Like something else would have happened with like the second most powerful family. Like you know, more of the Valerians would come in. They would probably like the Lannisters would come in. You know, it would have been the war to divide the seven kingdoms, which is like that what happens in Game of Thrones.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think I had the same thought. I was like, oh, you've got them right there.
I know, right? We all did. We're all going, say it, even though you know she can't.
Yeah. But I also completely agree that taking them out of the equation isn't going to stop the chaos from happening because there's already people who already do not want Rhaenyra to be queen.
Yeah, exactly.
So that chaos is going to happen regardless of that. Also, I think, you know, she doesn't want to kill Alicent.
Yeah.
I don't. I really don't think that she wants to. Yeah. I think that was quite telling. I think she would probably love to kill Otto. But
I think she was also trying to, as a way, it could be a way to try to force Allison to stop being a prisoner who's looking out a window, as she referred to Allison, as a way to kind of be like, Allison, this is your chance to kind of do what you should do. Do rather than letting the men do things for you.
Yes.
Or force you into doing what you don't want to do, like it's been her entire life.
Yes. I think what's fascinating to me is as we kind of we'll close up the conversation here shortly in a little bit, I guess. But like what's fascinating to me is looking at the Rings of Power and what happens in over 9 hours worth of television there, and what's happened in 9 hours worth of television with House of the Dragon. I mean, just the where we were at the beginning of House of Dragon with Rhaenyra and Alicent being these innocent children to where they are now, which is just victims of the system, right? Fighting to stay afloat somehow, having to decide whether they're going to murder each other, being forced into marriages that they don't want, having bastard children and all this kind of stuff. Like just the insane amount of story that has happened within this family drama over what is it? Was it 20 yearish period?
Yeah.
Something like that. It's been terrific, and then you think about the dreadful storytelling of the Rings of Power, in which the only thing that happens is Mount Doom is created and they forge some rings in the end.
In like 3 minutes, in a little montage in the semi-last episode.
Yes. Everything comes together in the last 2 episodes of Rings of Power, and you're like, but we've been wandering around with these stupid Harfoots forever. We've been listening to Galadriel Babylon about Sauron is out there, and Elrond and the dwarves bickering over Mithril and singing.
They've been doing it all the time. And the Mithril,
where it's like with House of Dragon, what I love about it is every moment, every conversation is pushing things forward. Nothing stays the same,
Great. Every shot, every word is meant to drive the story.
Yes. Like I think about Damon, like he's been one of my favorites. Like I'm loving that Matt Smith is in this role. Everything from when he sort of went out on his own and went and took on the crab feeder guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just showed you how desperate he was, and I think angry he was that he doesn't have the power to be king, right? It shows just what he's almost becomes quite reckless, and willing to kind of sacrifice his whole life just to kind of prove how great he is. And you don't get anything like that in the Rings of Power. Nothing no character comes close to that sort of lunacy and stuff. And then even the way Daemon just sort of manipulated every situation, every marriage, to finally get to Rhaenyra, which is what he wanted, I think, from very early on. I think was it episode 1 or something like that, or
basically it kind of showed, like, you can see that they do have like chemistry from the very first episode. But I think what episode was it? It was like basically he takes her to the brothel, blah blah blah, and Damon's just let me marry me, like let me marry her, I will. And we know it's because he actually wants to, like, but all these circumstances he's technically married, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I find there's so much complexity.
Yeah.
To this show and this cast of characters, and I love it, and I think that is one of the reasons why I think, in my opinion, I think all of our opinion, that there is really no contest between these two fantasy shows.
Yeah.
House of Dragon just completely obliterates the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power is fantasy, it's Lord of the Rings knockoff stuff. It's it's like anytime you see some kind of some sort of fantasy knockoff stuff, we're like, oh yeah, this is kind of like that other stuff, but
Yeah.
not as good, but serviceable for people who don't really care or aren't that invested. Whereas this is just, I mean, I agree with what you were saying earlier, Rebecca, that this show absolutely, I think it is better than Game of Thrones. I think it is knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Corey in the chat says HBO shows have always pushed my tolerance for slummy grit and grime. Not watching George R.R. Martin. Wait, not with George R.R. Martin. So they prefer, Corey prefers Tolkien instead. But too bad Amazon tried to make Tolkien gritty and lived in. Choose another author for that. Oh, I agree. I think if Amazon wanted to do something Game of Thronesy, Tolkien was not the property to do that with.
And Wheel of Time is a failure too.
It is. I mean, this is the thing: is there are shows on Amazon that I think have been great. I think the Bosch the Bosch series was pretty darn good. Everything else is going out of my mind at the moment, but like Reacher was terrible. Wheel of Time was laughable. I mean, we watched Wheel of Time just not knowing anything about it, and we were like, this just felt like Lord of the Rings, Narnia knockoff wannabe stuff that fans of the book were really disappointed by. Which is quite a shame. This is what Phil has been drawing while we've been talking.
Amazing, I love it.
Thanks. Like, can you recognize all of them? I guess
oh yes, absolutely.
Oh,
yep.
fantastic.
You get the cane, you get the hand, you got Damon.
I got another layer down there below. I was doing a little more. I'll show you when you finished taking this in. I'll show you the other one.
But yeah,
so we got our Game of Thrones guys, and then I did a little Sauron at the beginning. And then,
that's great.
Thanks. And then there's like they're our other guys here from the other show.
The other show.
Oh no, it's glitching again.
Oh, it's okay. I don't know why it does that with you sometimes.
It's because it's actually just doing like an AirPlay kind of thing.
Right.
On my computer, and I will reset it so you guys just keep talking.
Yeah. So I suppose the next big thing is what in the hell is going to happen in this final episode of House of the Dragon.
Well,
someone's gonna die. Someone else is gonna die.
We need some death, I'm sure.
And the thing is if what's interesting, if you had watched Game of Thrones, you would actually like they do explain like the Song of Ice and Fire in it quite in detail. So, and I remember that particular scene. I think it was the 3rd or 4th season. Find out. So it's like I think I know what's going to happen, but I wonder if they're going to execute all of it. And if they do, it's going to be a huge deal.
Okay, because like I need some clarity here. So that little dagger.
Yeah. See, the dagger, I actually forget that detail of like what's so important about it. And I know it's really significant, but I can't remember why. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's so much detail in this world. I can only keep track of so much.
Only so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have no idea, but it's like it has to is that all to do with like what happens in Game of Thrones? Because I think that's the whole thing with the White Walkers and stuff. Is that what it is? Is that what we're talking about?
Ooh, well, it's Valyrian steel, and that's what they had to use to kill the White Walkers. I feel like I saw someone online say that may have been the sword that the dagger Arya was using, but I'm not sure. But
yes, Arya uses the dagger to execute. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look it up while we're talking. Yes.
And I think like Valyrian steel is also one of the only things that can like kill a dragon as well. So I think this is supposed to be very significant. This dagger, like the person who wields it will like be the Song of Ice and Fire or something like that. I don't know if I'm correct. Someone correct me if I'm wrong.
Something like that. We need someone in the chat. But Wahab has had to leave, and he would have been the one to probably tell us because I think I think he knows he knows this stuff very very well.
Yeah.
Biffer says that I felt Foundation on Apple TV Plus was terrible too. I haven't seen anything on Apple.
I haven't seen that. I've only watched
Foundation. Is that the show with Aquaman? Wow, I forgot his name.
Aquaman.
Yeah, with
Jason Momoa.
Momoa, yeah.
No idea. No idea.
Yeah,
The Amazon, the Apple stuff is it's one streaming service too much for me. I just don't care.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just don't care. But yeah, no, guys, this was a lot of fun. I really
No, it
enjoyed
was.
deep diving into both of these shows. And I get a kick out of.
It's working again. It's working again. You can see it. I'm not gonna
Okay,
touch it.
let's show real
Okay,
quick.
here we go. There we go. Now you can see all the other characters that I drew.
Oh yeah, she got the little.
Oh, that's
elf guy.
awesome.
Love it. I like that. That's good. That's good stuff.
You got Elendil over there on the left. You got the Uruk guy. I don't remember his like. I skipped episodes 3 to 5, so I don't even know. Like he's there somewhere, and
we can close this off with a few like really bad lines from the Rings of Power. I did screen grab some people who were quoting some really, really terrible stuff that made me laugh. One was the wine of victory is sweetest for those whose bitter trials it has fermented.
Does that so
even make sense?
Can't even with that.
Or this one, another cracker. Sweeping the enemy from the land like salt off the table.
Oh, don't. No.
We don't need that in our lives.
And this last one here. Where there is love, it is truly never dark. I love it. This is
truly
actually,
never dark.
This is one of the things that absolutely drives me nuts about a lot of modern day television. I'm so glad that House of the Dragon doesn't do this. Whereas Star Trek does it relentlessly. New Star Trek does it relentlessly. House of the Game of Thrones, God damn it. Rings of Power did it relentlessly as well, and that is just this constant speechifying and empty platitudes. Just everything is trying to be forced and emotional and deep and meaningful, and it's like you're trying so hard and it's so obvious, and stop it.
Yeah,
Stop it.
Yes,
Jason, stop it.
Corey says, "Take that, Tolkien."
It's not Tolkien. It's the Rings of Power writers.
It is. Yes. No, it was absolutely dreadful. But yeah, no, guys, this was a lot of fun. Rebecca, thanks for coming and hanging out with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's been great. It's been great.
We will definitely do some more. I genuinely, even though I say this about Marvel, like I say I'm done. I'm not watching anymore. I'm probably not going to watch any more Rings of Power. I will probably not watch a second season.
Oh no. We've seen what they got.
Yeah,
we're
we will absolutely be back talking about Rings of Power, and not Rings of Power.
I mean, Game of Thrones,
House of the Dragon,
House of Thrones, Game of Power, House of Thrones,
House of Dragon Thrones,
Lord of the Dragon.
Yes, we'll definitely bring you back on for some more House of the Dragon chat in the future.
That'd be good. That'd be good.
But yeah, if anyone in the chat has anything to say, I would say, say it now or forever hold your peace.
Or forever hold your peace.
Otherwise, I should say next week. Oh yeah, next week we're back with this tonight. We were actually meant to do a James Bond discussion, but our guests had to swap. So next week we are going to be doing a chat about James Bond and what it means to evolve that character.
How many James Bond movies do I have to watch, Luke?
It's up to you, but I would, watch a few, I guess.
I mean, I've seen all the Daniel Craig. I've seen all the Pierce Brosnans.
I mean, I've seen.
I avoid Roger Moore.
Do you like Roger Moore, Rebecca?
I have only seen the Daniel Craig James Bonds.
Oh wow.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'm not the first mask.
Okay. James Bond is not your thing, or at least Daniel Craig.
Not really.
That's fine.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no, he's an interesting character. What he is on film is very, very, very different to what he is in the books.
I'm curious about the books because I do love those types of stories, like spy stories, espionage, and that sort of stuff. So I'd be curious to read the books.
I would give them a go because they are. I think the thing to remember, there's just a couple of things to remember. One, the Sean Connery films are very much a product of 1960s sexual revolution, right? So it's not that he's just this nasty misogynist. It's that that's what the 60s were about.
Yeah.
Right. But Bond in the books is he really, I don't really call him he's more of an anti-hero. He is very, very damaged. He is an alcoholic. He is willing to give his life for his country. He has very little, I think, respect for himself as a person, because his whole thing is about his body, his essence is just to be a tool for the British government, which is very, very, very different to what you get in the films. Yeah, I would say give them a watch. They're good. What the hell is this? Is this Picard?
That's old Picard.
Oh my god, Patrick Stewart. That's hilarious. But anyway, yeah, next week we're talking all things James Bond. The producers of the show have made comments about how Bond will evolve in the way that men have evolved, and I'm like, how have men evolved? What do you mean by that? So yeah, it's gonna be fun. So yeah, that's next week.
It's just taglines.
Yes, it is.
That's fine.
But yeah, cool. We will see you all next week. So
all right,
have a good
night. This concludes another Luke Deckard show.
This concludes
Cheers
our
to
broadcast day. Bye.